Dr. Bob here. Let's talk about life, living systems. So, the fundamental question is life similar and related to everything else in the universe? Or is it something entirely different that functions under, some magical laws? Or does it actually adhere to physical principles? And I would say unambiguously, yes. Life does adhere to physical principles, and they're based on, at least in kind of the real world of real time, everyday life, they're based on principles of far from equilibrium thermodynamics as discovered by Dr. Ilya Prigogine. He got the Nobel Prize in 1977 for what's known as flow-dependent structures. So intrinsic in the idea of flow is intrinsically time, right? Going from here, flowing to there, means there's time involved. And what we're looking at when we look at living systems is the accumulation of complexity, the order, the organization of our molecules, but not in a static sense that they're just sitting there. It's all the flowing energy. And where does this energy ultimately come from? The energy of the universe. Not only the sunlight, which is the most obvious source for us on the planet, but the 0 point energy that's part of everything, that feeds everything. And modern science now tells us that everything in the universe is connected with everything else, in that every particle appears to basically be a hologram of everything else. And this is a whole interesting concept. I've provided some links in the past from a wonderful Italian theoretical physicist. And that is consistent in many ways with things that I've been taught by my brilliant friend Brad Sorensen. In any event, the point here is that life functions according to basic principles of physics. Flowing energy creates organization. And when it does that, it always does it with a balance of opposing forces. And the most fundamental balance of opposing forces that occurs in living systems is the balance between efficient energy production that drives us into the future by creating our ability to unfold into the future. But as we do that, we generate biological friction, free radicals, that are fundamental communicators of the state of the system, be it on a subcellular level, a cellular level, a tissue level. You go right on up to communication between people. Is the communication promoting harmony and the ability to create and move into the future, or is it detrimental? Is it destructive? And how are those things balanced? Well, it turns out that the fat burning is the other end of the equation in living systems. And when fat burning is turned on, it literally turns off carbohydrate and peptide metabolism. So it turns off the drive into the future. Why? Because the system requires repair. And while it's fixing itself, it can't be engaged in that same level of advancement into the future. So where things become totally bizarre and interesting is that our endocannabinoid system, which formally first appeared with the appearance of vertebrates, and by formally I mean that there was a receptor system. So prior to that, we had the biochemicals of cannabinoids, of endocannabinoids, and some of them have been around since the beginning of life. But as complexity builds, we build higher levels of structure, dynamic structure, living things on that foundation. So we absolutely must have, on all levels of our complexity, the balance between driving us into the future with efficient energy production and repairing the damage that's caused. And now, why do we deal with damage? What is the damage? The main source of efficient energy production is the electron transport system. It's a little solid state miracle that is very efficient at capturing energy and transforming it into a form that can be used by living systems, by biological systems. So the ultimate outcome here is that CB1, by regulating the electron transport system, literally drives us into the future. When you get stoned, what are you really doing is you're really simply turning on your brain beyond its normal level. And of course, that's a disruption because you have a certain level of harmony existing, and now all of a sudden you've kind of opened the floodgates. And it's like, you're allowing more to flow in, and you're allowing it to flow in a way that's more creative. It's not as embedded in maintaining the status quo, but really exploring the future so we can move into it successfully. So the disruption of getting high comes from not getting high enough, frequently enough. Because what happens is the more you get high, you really transform your brain and your being into an altered state, I would say, a more advanced state where you're free to be more creative. You're not trapped in the anger and the hostility, the bullshit that constipates the flow of our creative being, of our health. And from this whole perspective, of course, when the flow is properly balanced between driving into the future and repair, which of course is going to be dependent not only on your mind, but what your mind does in terms of what you eat. You are what you eat. So eat the things that keep you in redox balance, meaning you're not making excessive free radicals. You're making enough free radicals that the system is constantly adapting to the changes in the environment that are your life. And you want that and need that adaptation. So the more you learn about this process, the more you can free yourself from, again, the constipation of ignorance that we evolve our individual lives in, and collectively our whole social and basically planetary structure. So what we're seeing happening right now is what I've been talking about for years, the far from equilibrium phase change on the planet. Where are the currents in our ocean, the atmosphere, the levels of oxygen, all of the things that characterize are vibrating. And instead of vibrating a little bit, they're going crazy. And that's because we have so much flow, all the energy that we use. And that flow is destabilizing the system, the biological system and its manifestation in our society. So we have to become smart now. And thankfully, there is new technology that will allow us to expand into the future in a clean energy fashion, which of course will have its own complications, because as time unfolds, we're always dealing with the pros and the cons of the reality of systems that are constantly oscillating and fluctuating and talking to one another. The question is, are we building a healthy biosphere, or are we promoting the destruction of the status quo and our ability to move into the future? Peace and love. Be optimistic. Consume your cannabis, CBD and vitamin D and NAC for everybody as the foundation for health. If our governments had any brains, which we know they don't, because they're always interested in greed, money, and power, they would be, here's my socialism, giving free CBD, NAC, and vitamin D to everybody on the planet. So instead of being down here, our basic level of health is up here, and we are immune for the most part to not getting infected, but successfully dealing with the infection. So we can acquire the natural immunity that's going to have the diversity and the tendency to promote the ability to adapt to the different viral mutations that will naturally occur, especially with an RNA virus that has a sloppy polymerase, so that we can deal with these changes by adapting within our body. And again, that balance between fat burning and sugar burning is fundamental, because this virus infects all of your cells, not just like influenza, respiratory, and gut epithelial cells, but all of your cells. So the cells that are lining your blood vessels, when they respond with a hyperinflammatory response, you get vasoconstriction, high blood pressure, you get lack of oxygen, and you have all the associated problems that occur with not feeding the system what it requires for optimal health. So the whole virus story is bullshit, because nobody talks about controlling it. Anybody with a brain, you should be able to understand that if you don't provide the fuel to the virus cannot do its thing. It's not that hard to understand. You know, you talk to anybody, normal people, and they say, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The car can't run without fuel. It doesn't matter which model car, if there's no fuel, it's not going to run. Same with viruses. Doesn't matter which mutation. It matters, are you providing the fuel? Why is this concept beyond the ability of doctors and scientists to just say how obvious it is? Normal people know. You talk with them now, yeah, it makes sense. And we see the evidence. We see now everybody's talking about vitamin D, and we see hints about CBD activity, which turns on fat burning. So the story is so consistent, it's pathetic that we live in a world of scientific ignorance, the inability to embrace new knowledge because they're successful in the status quo. No matter how wrong and harmful it is, a lot of people benefit, and they're not going to give up their comfortable lifestyle, their income, to help you. It's too disruptive. You have got to wake up. We collectively, the people, have to take back our society from the Nazi-minded Gestapo fascists that are telling us how to live with our mask on, with fear. Make sure you get your your vaccination. Why not promote the development of health and the adaptability that's required for a successful move into the future for humanity? Peace and love. Smoke your pot, eat your nutrients, turn on fat burning, stay away from carbohydrates. Everybody make sure you take NAC. The feedback I'm getting is so mind-blowing. It really is shocking. Bye.